Yeah, that's very interesting point, Sharon, that you made. And one of the things that really kind of it was very strong when you were talking about, and is the kind of myth that I've heard over and over and over again. And I'm not sure whether this is local. That I've heard that in the majority of times I've heard that in kind of the very Polish context, and I don't know whether this relates, and I'm not sure whether this is the myth that you have heard as well. But a lot of people I've heard that they are saying that the kids are developing or maturing quicker than I've ever done before because of the social media and technology. And I was thinking about that, like I was reflecting about this, and I actually think that, well, I don't think this is the case. I think this is our interpretation of this because we are bombarding our children with technology, with the gadget, with the social media, with that, the global village of the Western and Eastern society and connections. But actually, the biological development, I think the brain is not fully developed until like somewhere in the mid-20s.
Yes, that's right. And in fact, we're again back to science. We're understanding more now that they believe it may even be the late 20s and beyond that the brain is fully developed. And we didn't have that knowledge before in terms of science and neural knowledge. However, it was the same. As you said, that was the same in the past. That's always been happening. We just weren't aware of what it meant for brain development. I think you're absolutely right. One of the lovely things that I like to introduce when we're working on our postnatal mental health course for therapists is to, and I'm afraid I don't have the quote to hand, and it's a long one, but it's a beautiful passage that talks about, teenagers and teenagers being completely out of control and difficult, and they're rude and they're whatever, and we ask the therapists that are on the training course who you think might have said that, and lots of them guess 20th century psychologists mostly, or theorists. We get guesses about Freud, lots of different guesses. And actually, it was Socrates, one of our most ancient philosophers, many, many years ago. I don't have the exact date now. And so back then we were talking about teenage rebellious behavior, as we are now. So, and I think sometimes that becomes misinterpreted now as, as to do aligned with maturity that seems to be changing. And I think now what is happening because of social media is that our children and our teenagers are being exposed to things that developmentally they're not ready for, and they're not ever going to be ready for. We know that the definition of trauma, I don't know if it's an aspect that you've ever heard of yourself, Karol, but the idea of trauma being when the perceived threat is greater than the perceived ability to cope. And so it's about an interpretation of the situation and, of course, our response to it. And if you think children at different maturity levels, they have got hopefully increasingly more ability to cope in terms, again, of emotional regulation, of psychological development, of cognitive development, and of their abilities in the world, their skills, their learning. Everything is maturing, but that's not going to happen even with the advent of social media, without their ability to develop those coping strategies.